the athlete gets this bad rap, like we're this uneducated, blowing money type situation. It's just, we felt offended, quite honestly, about it, because at the end of the day, if I dropped $10 million in your lap at 18, you're probably going to make bad decisions. We do a terrible job as a country educating on finances. So to us, it wasn't an athlete problem, it's an education problem.
Hey everybody, welcome back to The Connected Advisor. I'm your host, Kyle Van Pelt, CEO of Mile Marker. And today I have the pleasure of being joined by Brandon Averill. Brandon is a partner at AWM Capital. He's a former professional baseball player being drafted to the Houston Astros out of UCLA. And Brandon is also a family man to his wife, Ann. And also he has 3 awesome kids that we're going to talk a little bit about today. They have a really unique story at AWM where they focus on the niche of professional athletes as well as other types of athletes that we're going to talk about today. Brandon, thanks so much for joining the show.
Kyle, excited to be here and just looking forward to having this conversation with you.
Yeah, me too, man. So I love to start this conversation off the same way with every guest. And what I've found is everybody has a unique route into this industry. And I think yours is going to be unique as well. But obviously you played baseball up through until your career ended there. And then you ended up becoming a financial advisor. But my question I ask everybody is, what is your money moment? Because you could have done anything really after your baseball career. And you ended up here. And I think what I've found is almost everybody who ends up in this profession had a moment, a money moment that kind of led them to say, hey, this is where I want to go dedicate my time and my career is to helping other people being successful with their money. So what was yours?
Yeah, it might be a different answer than quite a few people. I don't know that there was a specific money moment in the sense of wanting to be in this industry, to be honest. Really what I would say I'd credit the money moment to, or the person I'd give credit to, is my brother, Eric. And really the allure to me in the industry initially was to build a business with him. So when I got done with my playing career, I went into corporate banking. So I'd been doing that for about 4 or 5 years. And really it was my brother played as well, played at Arizona State, was playing pro ball, blew out rehabbing from Tommy John surgery, and really fell in love with the idea of giving advice to athletes on the financial side. So, I always say made his biggest and best sell and talked me into going down and joining him on this journey. And really, I would say my evolution or the money moment maybe came after we made the decision to get into this industry. Once I was able to sit down with a client, really see the impact that we could have on their lives in a greater way than just putting kind of money together. That's probably the best way I'd answer it.
No, I love that, man. That's really cool. What's it like working with your brother? I'm sure growing up, you guys had scuffles and toughs and all of that stuff. Now here you are in business every day, going into the arena. What's it like working with your brother?
Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic is the short answer. I think at the end of the day, you can't trust anybody more easily. We did have a great relationship growing up. We diverged in college. I went to UCLA. He went to Arizona State. We got to play against each other twice, 2 years. So that was fun. But at the end of the day, I think, we always tell the story. We tried to blow this whole thing up early. We're pretty different. And, I think through some really fortuitous coaching really early on figured out, hey, we're actually motivated about the same thing for the same thing. We have the same desires. We just go at 2 different ways of going about it. And I think that's part of the magic is we're different and we want to go to the same place. So the combination of those skills and those approaches, I think has really led to a lot of our success early on and being able to develop and build a pretty diverse team.
That's cool. Yeah, not everybody gets the opportunity to do that. So that is pretty special. And it's cool that you guys can work together and have built, from the outside at least, a seemingly pretty darn successful firm. So tell us a little bit about AWM Capital. I know that the focus is kind of on athletes, but, I'd love to hear it in your words. What type of firm are you guys? Tell us about it.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, what we are is we like to talk about multi-generational families. Like we're here to create multi-generational, wealthy, flourishing families for athletes. That's really our North Star, is showing up on a daily basis, being a human-centered family office. We think that's really important. We think that human-centered piece is missing from a lot of places. So, when we look at it, we want to be unique in the way that we are sold out. We are for the athlete. Everything we do decisions that are made are really focused on the athlete and the athlete's family, and how do we come alongside them and help them to create that multi-generational, wealthy, flourishing family. And, in doing that, that really is why we exist as a multifamily office, is because it's that integration of wealth and really kind of the more purpose-driven piece of your life that we think is really impactful. And then beyond that, it's really building the expertise, making sure that we have the technical chops to continue to execute in the way that fulfills the ultimate promise. So that's how we look at wealth. It's not something that kind of has a start and stop with an investment portfolio. It bleeds through to many other areas.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, and I know you and your brother both played baseball, but from some of the research I did, AWM doesn't just serve baseball players. You guys work with, it looks like professional golfers. It looks like maybe some football players, things like that. So are you guys working with all types of athletes, or are you focusing on specific types?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we exist to serve the athlete market. And so baseball is our background. That's how we got started. And so that's definitely our bread and butter. And I would say what we have most experience with. About 3 years ago, we brought on some folks to really head up our football team. You have to know that the segment that you're working in. And so, for Eric and I to go into football, I think we could do an awesome job. But the team that we've assembled there, I think they just have a leg up. They lived in the world. They have powerful stories. They understand what's going on. They have the expertise to really, work with that specific athlete. Same on the golf side. We brought on an advisor a couple of years ago that's really focused on that golf side, has unique expertise in that world. And so we are, I would say, broader than just a baseball firm. We are an athlete firm at the end of the day.
That's really cool. That's really cool. So something I've got to ask you about, because I'm just morbidly curious. I mean, if you're working with athletes, very recently we entered this Wild West world of NIL in college. And now all of a sudden it's maybe not necessarily just professional athletes that need financial advice, but it might also be college athletes as well. And I've seen some of the content you've put out about NIL and things like that. So it looks like AWM Capital is trying to help educate people or help assist the athlete at the collegiate level too. We could talk about this a lot, but, kind of open-ended question of talk to us about the wild, wild west of NIL as it pertains to people trying to manage their wealth at such a young age.
Yeah, I think the NIL whole spectrum, I think there's so much good and bad. I think the wild, wild west is the great way to put it. I think athletes being compensated for the revenue that they're generating in these schools. Absolutely. I think it's a fantastic thing that started to happen. I think we need some maturation in the process a little bit, and that's both going to come in structural side on the, what's happening across college sports. But when we speak specifically of the wealth, it's education, right? It allows us to get in there and give a little bit more education early on where it's tangible. It's tough before, where you'd go into an athlete like this and say, hey, you're about to face all of these things. You should have an individual 401k set up. You're going to have to pay taxes. You're going to have to do these different things. And it was all sort of like, I kind of know what you're talking about. Now it's hands-on experience. Like, oh, this is real. So that's really good. I think the potential negatives are, it does bring a lot of people a lot earlier to the party. I think people that are more sales driven and less expertise driven find their way in quite a bit easier, quite a bit earlier. There's good and bad of it. I think at the end of the day, if we all can continue to push education and hopefully get those clients or get those athletes up to speed a little bit quicker, the better off everybody's going to be. Does it create any more opportunity? I think for a firm like ours, frankly not. I mean, we're so focused on families that we think are going to earn 75 million or more in their career. Does that change who we go after? The profitability because of NIL? No, but I think it does for a lot of different people. But yeah, I'm excited that they are being compensated. I'm excited they're getting this education. Hopefully they're getting good education.
Yeah. Well, a couple more questions here, just getting in the weeds a little bit. So obviously there's lots of headlines around college football NIL, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, I've also seen some really interesting stuff on the golf side, right? Where, some of these guys are able to get tons of sponsorships. I'm curious about other sports like college baseball. You don't hear a ton about NIL in college baseball. I think especially because you get more kids drafted out of high school into pro ball and things like that. But are you seeing any prominent NIL stuff happening in college baseball at all, or is it, mostly concentrated in a few sports?
Depends on your definition of meaningful. We're definitely seeing, 6-figure deals in baseball.
Wow.
And so the best players are right around that. We don't have baseball players making millions or any of that type of thing, but you start to see where, some of the better players are transferring. Make no mistake about it. Those are NIL numbers that are making that happen. So, and championships are being built on it. LSU last year with the players that they brought in, the transfers they had come in, they all got NIL money. It probably had an impact on them getting there. So it's showing up. And in those cases, there are real strategies that are at play that they should be taken care of to, help from a tax standpoint and everything else.
Well, yeah, that was actually my next, kind of in the weeds question. But, some people might know this, other people don't. But professional athletes' income is really interesting because it's like, if you play a game in California, like that game's got to be subject to California tax and all over as you travel. I mean, that's like mind blowing for people who are trying to help with taxes and wealth. But is that also applied to like NIL? Like if you're if you're at LSU and you play a game in Mississippi State or any of these, is it the same, or is that kind of like, you made all your money in the state of Louisiana?
It's a good question. The short answer is what you're describing is a duty to allocation. So when you're earning wages from a team and you're playing on all these different states, you have to bifurcate those wages to the different states that you're actually performing those services in. The theory or where most of the NIL money comes is more name, image, likeness on services you're providing, not necessarily because you're providing those services on the field. So those wages would be allocated to the state that you're a resident of. And so you're always taxed your resident state first. You get credits, all the other states that you're playing in. So yeah, it does become quite a jumbled mess. And quite frankly, where we see a ton of opportunity, because back to the specialization, if you're not used to dealing with it, you're going to take the W-2, it's kind of shifting back to the team side or the pro side, but you're going to take the W-2, you're going to allocate that based on what they are. Like, you're missing the boat. You got to sit down and reallocate everything. You got to take spring training days into account. You've got to know where the client was if they were on the IL and they stayed in Florida because they played for Tampa Bay, but the team was in California. The team's not doing that work for you. Your team better be doing it on the backside.
Yeah, and that's why I wasn't surprised at all to hear that AWM is a multifamily office, because that there's so much involved there beyond just planning and investment management that you really have to help holistically serve athletes. I don't know if most people realize all of the complexity that you just outlined, right? Yeah, like even down to, well, your team might have been in California, but if you were in Florida, right, it's crazy. So very, very unique perspective and a very interesting niche.
At the end of the day, right, we always talk about money is just a tool. So, but what you always want to focus on is, making sure that you're doing the proper things to maximize the wealth that ultimately could impact your family or the causes that you really care about. And that does come down to the nuts and bolts and really having that understanding. It's a big reason we decided to become a multifamily office. I think Eric and I both started at Morgan Stanley. I lasted all of 3 months before figuring out that, that's, in our opinion, not the best way to manage wealth, that you do need to give tax advice. Like, that's a big part of serving an ultra wealthy family. And unfortunately, as we all know, if you go read the disclosures, you can't do that there as much as the industry likes to portray that they can. And so, I do think it's that holistic nature that really benefits a client. And at the end of the day, it's also unfortunate. Most of the wealth, even in sports, is still controlled by, brokers and these wirehouses that, are great people and mean well. It's definitely show up every day and want to do the best things for their client. It's just structurally, unfortunately, we felt like that wasn't the best way to do it.
Yeah, well stated. I want to take that as an opportunity to segue into the content that you create. That's how that's how we kind of learned about you and why I wanted to have this conversation. It just has such an incredibly educational bent. And I think too, not necessarily from a, hey, I'm a wealth manager, here's how you, but you have things like what it's like being a wife of an athlete, things like that. And so talk to us just a little bit about how you don't see a lot of advisors using YouTube the way you are. You don't see a lot of advisors putting out content like you are. How did you guys stumble upon that as a strategy, or just, open-ended question, but talk to us about that.
Yeah, I think we look at it and, we serve families. We don't serve individuals. And so talking about the wives is oftentimes in the background. People don't realize what it means to be the wife of a professional athlete. It's pretty intense. At the end of the day, we end up working with the wives quite a bit for our male athletes. And, they're the ones that are taking care of the home. They're ones oftentimes involved in the finances. And so really some of the struggles that they go through, and they may have more of the questions around the tax complexity, et cetera. So really making sure that we're paying attention to the whole family is important to us. And then I think broader strategy for why we put out content is when Eric and I first got into this, I think we became fairly passionate around the athlete gets this bad rap, like we're this uneducated, blowing money type situation. It's just, we felt offended, quite honestly, about it, because at the end of the day, if I dropped $10 million in your lap at 18, you're probably going to make bad decisions. We do a terrible job as a country educating on finances. So to us, it wasn't an athlete problem. It's an education problem. It's not realistic that we're going to be able to help everybody. And for us, we're still running a business. We're trying to generate or build a multi-generational company so we can fulfill our promise to the multi-generational families. To do that, there's a profit piece of that. And so we're looking for families we believe are going to earn $75 million or more in their career. That leaves a lot of athletes that won't get addressed, right? And so be able to use the leverage of content, put it out there, especially around we started on education around the draft. There's a lot of people that get drafted that could use the advice on, hey, don't just take the 50-50 split on your structure for your bonus. Let's do a little tax planning here. We can't do a tax projection for the full draft. So here's the tools. Let's be more educated about it.
This podcast is brought to you by Turncast. We make game-changing content for fintech and financial services companies. Learn more at turncast.com.
As much as I love all of this stuff, it's cool to hear you talk about all of it because, I've seen some of this stuff firsthand with friends and things like that. And it's everybody just sees big contracts and getting drafted early. And here's what the signing bonus is for these, early draft picks. But nobody really understands all of the nuance and intricacy. And I really love what you said, which is, hey, we're going to serve the families that we have really well, but we can't serve everybody, right? Even if they all wanted to, right? Even if literally, is like, hey, the top 10 picks of every, of NFL, PGA, and MLB wanted to work with AWM Capital every single year. It's like, man, that's tough, right? That's a lot,
we'd figure that out.
Well, I'm sure you figured it out. But even extending, every draft pick wanted to work with you guys.
Right.
I mean, it's just, it's tough. It's cool that it's beyond just the success of your business. You truly do care about the family, I think, with the education of the content as well. And that's neat to see. All that being said, how has that impacted business? Because you do have a pretty specific and focused niche, right? So you're not just out there saying, hey, I'm taking a seminar, a retirement seminar, and putting it online to try and get people who are retiring and coming into the funnel. I mean, your niche, there's probably not the biggest funnel in the world. So how does that impact growth? Because you guys have been growing at a nice clip. So curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at sports, it's a fantastic place, for a lot of reasons. Somewhat recessionary proof. People love sports. It's going to continue to increase in value, at least for the foreseeable future. And the one thing is it's regenerative. So every year we've got a new crop of entrants into the market, right? There are drafts every year. These guys, come out of college, people retire. So it's a really neat ecosystem in the sense that it's, opportunities are always popping up. I think the market is pretty massive. It was scary. I think one thing, focusing on the niche, it's easier said than done. It's a little scary, and it's hard to turn down those that fall outside of your niche. We've had some success, like you said. We've been on a pretty good growth trajectory, but we're 14 years into this, so it's definitely not been an overnight type success by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, I mean, we've been fortunate. I think we're 21st fastest growing RIA this past year. I don't see us slowing anytime soon. And it's really because the clients that we do have, we've been fortunate that they've had a lot of success. And then we just get our fair share of opportunities and put ourselves in a place to win.
Yeah. Well, congrats on being an overnight success, 14 years in the making.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, well stated, man. So let's talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of running an RIA. So I've really enjoyed the conversation around, your niche and the type of clients you serve, but almost everybody that I speak to on this podcast does have something in common, which is when you're running an RIA that's growing that fast, things break all the time. And there's just challenges with keeping up with the growth with, whether it's technology, whether it's people, whether it's whatever. So open-ended question of just like, share some of the challenges that you've been working through of running a firm that's growing that fast.
Yeah, I think probably the biggest challenge is people, really finding the talent. We're fortunate. Our funnel of talent is actually pretty awesome. We get a lot of people that are interested in working here. What's much harder is we're still a small team. We're 30 people today. We did grow. We hired, I think, 8 last year. We'll hire another 6 to 8 this year. So it's keeping up with that and knowing like, hey, we got to keep this properly staffed to make sure we can continue to fulfill the high touch kind of high value service that we provide. But when you add even one person into a team of that size, it shifts culture. And so how do you stay really disciplined on, hey, this is the type of person that really thrives here. And we're not the place for everybody. That's like totally true. But, I think the people that do come and assimilate here really love being here. We are a team. A lot of people say that. I always try to warn people before they come, like, be real about it. Because if you're not, you'll be here for a short period of time and you'll kind of get vetted out pretty quickly. So we take a lot of time on the upfront, the due diligence to bring the right people in. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that we're focused on. We realize that people are our economic driver. It's going to be what, success is built on here at AWM. So that's definitely what gets a lot of my attention. Tech, we're always trying to stay on top of tech and how do we service our clients, better. So that's always a consideration. We're always trying to find a better way.
I hear you. Hey, I was just reading an article yesterday that, the turnover in the wealth management industry employee wise is like 36 to 40%. Like there's just tons of turnover and washout and things like that. And I do think that, most RIAs really, it is kind of two large investments of people and technology to serve your clients. And it's difficult to kind of get both of those right, especially the blend of both of them.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We've been fortunate on the tech side. We look at planning quite a bit different than a lot of people. So we employ a liabilities driven approach and really kind of more of an endowment type model to our families. We've got some pretty awesome tech that helps us with that piece of it. We invest in the private markets, which, brings its own kind of reporting type stuff with it that tech helps with. So we've been fairly lucky on that side as far as picking the right systems and continuing to integrate them. And then, we've been unbelievably lucky on the people side. The team that we've been able to build so far has been pretty phenomenal. They're just high performing, want to be elite type mindset. And then we've tried to support them really well too with the right coaches around it. So we've worked with mental performance coach Brian Kane that serves our company, brought him in for a summit this last year. It was pretty awesome. But I think just set the tone of trying to keep everybody rowing in the same direction. And we've been fortunate in having a team that's done that.
Love to hear about how technology is working for you. I also know, you kind of mentioned it earlier on, but there's, you guys have done a couple of M&A transactions, and it always seems to be a bit of a challenge of like trying to integrate, the other company's tech in with what you're doing and all of that. Walk us through how, again, I know the world doesn't just stop when you buy another business to let you integrate everything into that. So what kind of challenges were created there, or walk through how you guys handled that?
I guess from an M&A standpoint, I don't know that I'd call it traditional M&A. We've hired a couple advisors that have come from other places, but really with the mindset of we didn't expect them to bring any clients. So that was fairly easy. And then, they really assimilated to the tech that we had in-house. It's a big reason why they came to us is for the philosophy of that. And so we were fortunate that, we haven't had to battle through some of that stuff. I've watched some friends in the industry have to go through it. It's definitely a challenge at times. I can see that, but fortunately we haven't had to deal with it too much.
Appreciate you sharing that insight. Before we get to the last segment of the show, I want to ask you a question I like to ask other people, which is, great leaders tend to be able to see 3 to 5 years out into the future. So get out your crystal ball for me. Think about where the industry is going and what do you see happening over the next 3 to 5 years from where you sit?
Broadly for the industry?
Yeah, sure.
I'm speaking. I think one thing that'll be really interesting to watch is just private equity's entrance into our industry. At the end of the day, it's a beautiful industry, a beautiful, business model. And I can see why private equity is really excited about being here and investing in this space. We're pretty staunchly against it. We've, definitely taken the calls and understand kind of what the promise is. I think at the end of the day, though, what's being created is exactly what you were talking about, that M&A structures and having to marry different technologies, different personalities. There's one group in our very specific industry that's acquired a lot of the different sports players, and now they're trying to bring everybody together. Time will tell whether they're successful. It's very difficult. They're backed by a ton of private equity money. And I'm just a big believer that when you have a passive shareholder, it makes it really difficult to compensate the talent that you have internally to stick around and be the best that they could possibly be. So if I had my crystal ball 5 years from now, I think we're going to see some pretty spectacular blowups. I could see private equity getting a little dismayed on what the returns are coming back, talent fleeing those firms to go to firms that have stayed independent, stayed, employee owned, because I think you're going to have an easier time, compensating those people for the work that they do. So that's my one, I guess, big crystal ball deal.
Yeah. Wow. All right. That's a good take. I'm glad I asked that question. Very good. All right. So now we're going to seg into what we call the mile marker minute. It's kind of a lightning round series of questions, lighthearted, meant to be fun. The goal is to try and have all of the questions answered in a minute or less. So what do you think? You up to the task?
Let's do it.
All right. My first question for you as a fellow baseball lover, what is the best baseball park in America?
Oh, Fenway.
Yeah, Fenway. It's a great one. It's one of my, I actually got goosebumps when I went there the first time.
I agree. It's the first time I've walked on a field and was like, wow, this is different.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I know that you're a wine enthusiast. So what is if you could only drink one type of wine, you don't got to give me the label or anything like that, but one type of wine for the rest of your life, what are you going with?
So I will give you the specific producers of Devilet. I'd probably drink his Sunny Boy. It's not what he's most well known for. Ryan Devilet's the winemaker. They're based in Central Coast. Actually just bought a vineyard in Los Osos. But anyways, that's a whole different deal. But Sunny Boy is an homage to his father and his grandfather. He's actually more well known for his Pinots. He's a Pinot and Chardonnay producer, but fantastic winemaker. And that would be it.
That's fantastic. I love it. All right. What is one place that you would love to travel, but you've never been able to get to yet?
I'd probably say Italy. I haven't been to Italy. I think that'd be a really fun place to go. I've been there. I'll give a side note. I've been there, but I'd love to take my family, and it's the next trip I want to take is Japan.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. That's a really cool one. Awesome. Okay. Last question for you. What is the best part about being a financial advisor?
Just the impact on the families that you get to serve. I think, really helping them to understand the trade-offs of their decision making and, the power that I don't think really realize what they can create in a multi-generational impact and legacy if they really think about money as a steward rather than a consumption vehicle. And so I just think the impact that money can really have as a tool on generations.
Great place to end. Brandon, thanks so much for coming and sharing just a bunch of wisdom and insight on stuff that a lot of people probably don't know a ton about. I really enjoyed the conversation, and people hear me say all the time, but giving time is a gift, and we're thankful to receive it. So thanks for doing that.
Thanks, Kyle. I appreciate your time as well and everything that you're doing with this podcast and educating the industry.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, thanks again for coming on. Everybody, this has been another episode of The Connected Advisor. Please make sure that you subscribe or follow this wherever you listen to podcasts or watch them, and we'll see you on the next episode.